Welcome back to the Summit Scale podcast. I'm Joli Riley, business coach at the award-winning Summit Scale Coaching, and I'll be interviewing experts to find out answers to some of the most topical issues that business owners need to know now. One of the top questions on every business owner's mind, it's nearly 2 years since ChatGPT came out, and that question is, how does AI impact me and my business? So I'm delighted today to introduce Susi. Susi is the owner of a consultancy, Eva, and she's on a mission to demystify and educate on all things AI. I know this will be a fantastic conversation, and I'm sure it'll be a worthwhile investment of your time to watch. So welcome, Susi. Thanks for joining me today.
Hi, Joli. Pleasure to join you.
To tell me, what's your origin story and how have you arrived where you are today?
It's an interesting zigzaggy journey, as I think the best careers are, but I've always been working at the cross-section of marketing and technology my whole life. I started out a long time ago, just at the very beginning of this century, building the first websites. So I was in the Web 1.0 era, working in the music industry, very Wild West times, crazy innovation. Then when social media came along, I was helping educate a lot of small businesses actually, and those in education about how to use social media to best effect. Now, when Web3 came along, I was actually working in a big tech corporate environment until very recently. I'd got into the advertising world and I was creating, as a content director, creating branded content for some of the really, really big firms out there, like Unilever and other. I came to a role in a technology company. My role there was to educate enterprise and business audiences about the need for cybersecurity. But I did that through a really zigzaggy route in itself by helping them understand where emerging technologies were coming from. So it was a great opportunity to really create what you call, in a classical sense, thought leadership content about topics like AI and quantum computing. And through that, I was actually the host of a corporate podcast there, Insight Story, educating business leaders about new trends, which of course included AI, as well as blockchain, quantum computing, smart energy, etc. So fascinating stuff. And then when that reached its line, I wanted to work out, when I set up my business, how do you change that bit of the world? I know every business has a very purpose-driven mission, but I knew and I could see that businesses were just going head first into investing in generative AI specifically, with the big rise you mentioned of ChatGPT. But they weren't necessarily getting the results they wanted. And there's a lot of harm being caused actually by AI systems that don't work for people, end users, but also don't work for maybe employees who are expected to deploy those systems. And I could see that this was wrong. So I thought, well, how do I make AI better for everybody in the world? Well, I can start with what I know about, which is those business leaders, and educating them to really understanding what some of the key things they can achieve on a positive level, but also pragmatically and realistically, how do we make it work for people in those organizations? So it's influencing the business leaders about the positive direction of travel, telling them about some of the risks as well. We're going to come on to, because it's certainly not a silver bullet solution, but also like, how do we make it work for the people in those organizations? So it becomes a tool that's useful for them and not harmful, which is a potential risk.
Yeah, I think that's a fantastic idea. I've worked in tech my whole career, and there is a massive disconnect always between the actual technology and then the people that are going to use it and how you translate that into business benefit. So let's move on to, there's a famous case where Amazon used AI to screen CVs, and their intention was to remove unconscious bias. They thought that computers can't be unconsciously biased, but actually the models were trained on data that had an unconscious bias in it towards men, and they found that actually that exacerbated. So have you come across other examples in AI space of where there's potentially harmful gender gap issues?
Yeah, thanks, Joli. This is a particular topic pertinent to me. So just to break that down, the Amazon case, which was some years back, and lots of lessons have been learned, is an exact use case of what we now call the movement of responsible AI. So nobody goes out there and builds a technology or system intending to harm people. We've all seen Terminator, right? And Skynet was created with good intentions. It just turned bad, right? So no one intends to create a bias within their system. But what happens is that AI systems are trained on legacy. So in the case of Amazon's hiring, men were, statistically speaking, and particularly going further back with more years of data, were statistically more likely to get hired than women. Now, the system wasn't plugged in to say people who've been to this university or this gender or this race or this nationality should be selected for interview or selected for promotion over others. But that bias creeps in, and that's what they also call the black box, where people don't know how AI systems work, so they don't even know where the biases are creeping in. The responsible AI movement came out of a lot of these really horrific major cases, and there's now specialists out there in the world. And if you follow my newsletter, Responsible AI Leaders, I talk about some of these topics and highlight some of the leaders that you can follow in this space. There's a dedicated discipline about going in and helping organizations with their systems to do very detailed testing to try and root out discrimination bias. And that's really important. If you're a big business and you've got budgets and you're doing these systems, you must. Most of us are in that category. So we have to hope that those that we're buying third-party systems from are considering this. And definitely what we're seeing as we move further into the generative AI space with tools like ChatGPT and Copilot is there is actually more bias there. So I recently published an article called The 7 Examples of Gender AI Bias and the Gender AI Gap and what we can do to solve one of them. So perhaps we could share a link to that article in this podcast. Now, there are lots of, we haven't got time to go into all of them right now, but there are lots of examples of why bias is creeping in. Lack of women in general in the tech industry, lack of women in AI-specific startups. But we also see that bias that I mentioned creeping into the content itself. So there are examples and studies where biased language has crept into AI models. They're more likely to use languages like warm and supportive to describe a female leader, and those classic ones like assertive and direct to describe a male leader. If you're plugging in saying, give me some content, give me some text about things. I actually did a test of trying to force an AI image generation model, force them to show me a female surgeon. And it couldn't make an image of a female surgeon because the training data doesn't have any photos of women conducting surgery. It showed me lots of a woman nurse conducting surgery. It showed me a man in a dress conducting surgery, but it would not show it because the training data isn't there. So there's a lot of legacy reasons there, and that's what the whole responsible AI movement is. Now, on a practical level, the bit I've observed and I want to learn from your own studies, and I would love listeners to also get back to me with any examples that they've seen, but women are less likely to become AI tool users. We're talking about the consumer grade and the business grade tools here, like your ChatGPTs. They're less likely to use them in their lives and less likely to use them in their jobs. I have theories about this. I think a lot of it's to do with the way training is being conducted in organizations. We're getting AI coming in as a technology. Perhaps there's a tiny amount of training and best practice that's attached to that when the tool is launched. Perhaps not. I'd love to know people's experiences at work with this. No training and there's no support and structure, then telling people to go away and experiment is not a good answer, because the people who have too much to do typically are the women in your organization. They have what you call the side of desk task, which is a horrible expression of all the things you do on top of your job. So if you're asking a busy woman who's taking on additional load at home with care duties, they're taking on these side of desk activities in the organization, and then you're saying, just experiment and play around with these tools and it'll save you 5 hours a week. Well, what's that going to do to somebody? To start with, people are being forced to say, we've got these tools, so you should be more productive. So it's a blame rather than a supportive culture. And then if the training and the ongoing measurements of what that looks like, refresher training, it's not just a one and done thing here. Then again, like, people are going to be panicking. We're seeing examples and research done coming out by people who have no vested interest in this, like in the technology industry, saying that productivity gains aren't happening with AI. In fact, sometimes people are observing it going backwards. It's taking them longer to do tasks. And a lot of this comes down to finding the right use case. So you need to find things that are repeatable activities that do not require a lot of human and sentiment analysis. but they're things that you do every day. So every time you copy and paste something from one system to another, there's an automation tool. We don't need to even call it AI, it's just automation that will help you to do that more efficiently, because every time you move data around from one system to another, it's a laborious activity. So there's more automation of data that can happen. Then there's the analysis of data, which again, these systems can be great. They can, the emphasis on can be great because they can look for patterns and observe them. Anything that's repeated, you need to cut and do things 1,000 times over, AI is great for, but it's not great for what a lot of organizations are wanting to use it for right now, and a particular passion of mine as somebody who was a content director, which is creating content. Now, I try and use AI as much as I can, but it's great for pulling out research points. It's great for structuring information. And sometimes it's great for observing when you want to make a more like a viral style post. It will understand what the structure of a viral post would look like on your Facebook or your LinkedIn and help you to construct that. But it doesn't have ideas, right? And it doesn't understand. And this is what a lot of people are missing, that the tools themselves don't have the information. That they only have the information that's programmed in at the point for an enterprise solution that's programmed in. You'd be using generative AI tools. They are scraping information and making answers that sound plausible. They may not be accurate. So there's different layers here. It's never to say don't start. And particularly for women out there, I'd say do start, do something, but don't panic. And I talk about the movement of slow AI. We don't need to be having all the information all at once. We don't need to be suddenly 5 hours of more productivity. That is rubbish, the 5 hours. I don't know if this has come out of some big consulting group. Some people, if your job had 5 hours of repeated cut and pasting work, typing up meeting notes, knock yourself out. You're going to save 5 hours or more a week. But if your job doesn't have 5 hours of repetitive typing up and cut and pasting work a week, then you're not going to save 5 hours. So that's already a mistake. I like to assume that. So it's looking at your individual use case in your company, or as you as an individual within that company, and saying, where are these tools going to help me be more productive, where my activity is repeatable, where it's transcribable. For example, anything to do with translation or transcription of notes, like creating a podcast. Great, we can create a script notes really, really easily instead of manually having to type it up. But each use case is going to be very different for both the organization, the team within the organization, and the individual. And all of that is layers that we need to look at before we start going in wholesale and making big claims about what AI can do for us as a business or as an individual.
Yeah, that's brilliant. I love that idea, the things that AI is good for at the moment. And I remember seeing a funny meme where it said, I want AI to do my laundry so that I can have time to create art. I don't want to just be art thing.
Yeah, and it's important to highlight technology has always played a role in every cultural evolution. But I think the other thing to remember is that those who are selling us all the doom and naysay things about all these jobs are going to be eradicated, and also the conversation of productivity, let's resist it a little bit. Let's see this as an investment. If we can make employees be X amount of time more productive, but it's probably not going to be 5 hours. It's going to be different for each person. Then we give that person time back to do more advanced things. And there are some applications around AI automation that mean we can analyze more data more efficiently and faster in order to make better decisions on our market reach or our customer approach. So that's great. That gives time back. But if you're looking at it and saying, well, we're going to save costs here, then you're looking at the opportunity. Everybody's thinking the same. Everybody's got access to the same tools right now. So there's no competitive advantage. But if you can equip all your employees with feeling like mundane tasks are a thing of the past, let's say that's never going to happen in business. But some of the mundane tasks become slightly lesser because you have this, what's called assistive AI. It understands you, it understands your work, it understands your tone of voice. It can help you structure your diary a little bit better. It can help you come up with ideas when you need to create new content or be a sounding board. It can critique documents that you send it or ideas that you send it and say, have you thought about this? It's not got all the answers, but it can be that critical friend or that assistant that you maybe don't have if you're a small business or solopreneur. It's not going to be all the answers. And the whole thing, I think we should reject the idea of it being productivity. It's there about giving you assistance and helping you accelerate and do more with less.
And you talked about the investment into AI. And I think that's one of the things that most business owners struggle with is, should they invest now and be one of those early adopters? But we're seeing with lots of different technology, something either fades away, it's a fad, or you get such an early version of it that it's a waste of investment. But if you're a laggard and your competition takes that earlier stance, then sometimes it's just too late to catch up. Obviously, lots of big businesses like Kodak going bust with the way they didn't fully embrace digital photography. So what's your advice to business owners around the timeline?
So I suppose one question, is it a blockbuster or will it go blockbuster? Now, I think as a general technology, we call this a general purpose technology. It's a bit like the internet on overload. That's why it's also part of the suite of tools we call Web3, which also includes connected cloud and the internet of things. So there's a whole suite of other technologies that really are where things are right now and where they'll be going. So this general purpose technology, it's not going anywhere. The challenge we've got is we are at the peak of the hype cycle. So these companies like your OpenAIs are going through big funding rounds and they have to sell this very visionary view of the future, which I actually think is quite dystopian because they're sort of saying everything is going to change, right? And if you don't invest in this and give us billions of pounds to do this, then you're going to fall behind. So they're selling their own version of snake oil here because to these models to work and get to the next level of efficiency and improvement, they need billions and billions of dollars of investment. It's no small fry. Now, your big investors like your Goldman Sachs last year were saying, you should get on board with this. This is going to be the future. 3% productivity saving. I don't know where they get these calculations from. Goldman Sachs have turned around this year and said to the investor market, generative AI isn't going to make your money back. Don't put your money, investors, in this. Yeah. So you see how quickly these cycles happen. I remember in my first episode of Insight Story, which wasn't the podcast that wasn't that long ago, like less than 2 years ago, we did an episode about the metaverse. And that was predicted to be worth 50 billion. No, it kind of still is, but in a different form. We're not all, moving around in hyperspace with virtual reality and avatars. That's still a niche use case, but it's still a thing, just not a $50 billion thing. So we've got to be a little bit careful here. The AI isn't going anywhere because it's already starting to be embedded in a lot of government tools and systems, enterprise systems, but it's a general purpose technology. It's not necessarily a thing in itself. So if you're using a Grammarly tool to do spelling correction, AI will be embedded in that tool. You don't have to do anything to do that. And it's not a selling point. That's the other thing. If you keep pushing a message saying, well, you're an AI-powered technology solution, there's actually evidence to say that in certain territories and markets, that's a negative impact in certain age and demographics. So younger people in emerging markets in the global south respond very well to messaging about AI. People in the global south, particularly America and Western Europe, actually, they're worried about it. So you selling AI as a thing, even in your tech product, if you're a SaaS product, can be a negative as well as a positive. So don't assume it's all going to be well received. The other thing I talk about is slow AI is a movement I am behind, which is that we don't need it all at once. And we could talk and reframe that as what I would call WAIT. That's an acronym. I love acronyms. And it means working on AI transformation. That's my acronym, but you're all welcome to use it. So instead of saying what you're doing with AI, we're saying we're doing WAIT. We're working on AI transformation. We're doing something. So as a business, you need to do something right now. We've got the EU AI Act has kicked in. And in February 2025, there's a mandate called AI literacy, which means that if you're using an AI tool and the output is consumed anywhere in the European Union, you have an obligation to train your employees in the systems that they're using. That whole gap of just throwing the tool out and saying, good luck with it, you could get fined 1% of your turnover for that next year. Now, I don't think it'll all kick in straight away, and hopefully we'll get a little bit more guidance from those consulting with the EU boards about this. But let's say, why wait on that aspect on potential regulation edict, and then suddenly you're going to be scrabbling to find the AI trainer? Why not think about it sooner? and say, we know that we've got these tools. We want to invest in these tools. How do we get the best value out of it? And importantly, it's all about people. So the model that I promote, I call it the 10-20-70 model. And that's a very common learning model. You see these pyramids for just about anything. But the way I look at it is you spend 10% of your cognitive time and your budget on investing in a technology or a system, 20% on optimizing that through the processes and the data. So if you're buying AI tools, say even for creating generative AI content, images and videos, you need to train on what looks good from your own library. You need to embed your own tone of voice guidelines. So that's an investment in the process and system. But 70% of that effort is the people. So how are they using these tools? What training are you giving them? How do we get a feedback loop? So when we get anomalies of things coming out of systems that are wrong, how do we go back and check and change that and go back into the systems? And so people don't give up at that point and say, this is no good, it's taking me too long, or it's giving me false information. So that's the model that I really talk about, 10-20-70.
Yeah, I love that.
Oh, well.
And so you talked about the risk of complying with regulation. Are there other risks that businesses need to be aware of?
Well, one risk is people being worried about it. And again, it's not about pointing fingers and saying you're from the past if you don't want to do this. You've got to accept there's a lot of negativity in the media. So when I started my career building websites, maybe because I was younger and naive, but I didn't experience negativity. Nobody was like, "Well, you're stealing my job by building a website." It wasn't like that. Everyone was very excited to work with me and talk with me. And I had a terrific time. I was making websites for rock bands. And I got to meet and talk to people like Blackie Lawless from Wasp used to phone me up and say, make my website more yellow. That's like 4 in the morning. I used to get calls from LA from this rock star. And it was very hands-on and fun. Nobody was taking any negatives. Everyone saw the positives of reaching audiences through this brand new medium. Now, I didn't work for a publisher, so the conversation might be different if I was there or I was working for traditional media. But I do see now coming into and Web 2.0, again, like brave new world, exciting ways to interact with audiences. But Web 3, it doesn't feel like we're going into this with a positive intent in that you've got a category of influencer out there, including the AI CEOs, Sam Altman in particular, necessarily coming from a positive things that it can do for individuals and businesses, is being overhyped as this silver bullet that you push a button and all the answers come out. I mean, Sam Altman hysterically said that 95% of marketing would be eroded. Now, he never published that. It came out of a conversation and then leaked on the internet. And he evoked fear in marketing teams, in agencies, in the entire world. It rippled, but not in a positive way of saying, hey, marketing team, just think about how much you could do if you plug in AI. That would have been a positive tone of conversation. It was 95% of what you do is invalid. Now, this is coming from somebody who really doesn't understand how difficult marketing is. Marketing, everyone has an opinion on every aspect of a brand campaign, for example. You'll start getting, if you work for an agency, you start getting feedback of what the marketing director's daughter thought of it and things like that. It isn't going to be able to capture all that nuances and press a button and come out with some brilliant brand campaign. It'll just come out with what's been done before. So if you want to do things that are derivative, that have nothing original, nothing new to say, and over time will be increasingly poor quality because the training inputs are only going to get worse because it's being trained on things coming about AI. Knock yourself out. Gen AI written content is right for you. But if you want to come up with things that are original, like this conversation we're having now, you can't just ask AI to come up with these ideas of conversations. Perhaps it would come up with a version of it, but to get that real connection that you need and to make that difference between that extra 1 or 2% difference in your communications when it comes to marketing that makes it differentiated. AI won't do that, but that's not to say it hasn't got a role. It hasn't got a role in analysis, in coming up with the initial topic ideas, conversation starters, analyzing all the big data out there that is just too difficult for you to do as an individual. There's lots of tasks it can do within any given type of operation. It's about finding the right use cases that, again, are right for you, for your organization, for your team, and for you as an individual.
Yeah, totally. And we've got 1 minute left. So, final question. What is your top tip for business owners of what they should be doing now with regards to AI?
Start doing something by thinking about what your plan is. It's all about having a plan. You can get in touch with me and I can help you with that. But start thinking about what is the right use cases for your business and how you're going to get to that implementation. So it's not about doing it all now, about thinking about what will work for you and talk to your employees. Do a survey or an informal conversation. See how people feel about it right now. And that will give you indications of what to do next.
That's fantastic. I think that's true of all change.
Yeah, the change management, isn't it? That
Exactly.
we're dealing with that.
It's humans, and humans resist change. But if you can get people on board, then you've got much higher chance of success with that change. Susie, thank you so much for your time today. Fantastic conversation.
Thank you. Really enjoyed it, Joli.
Thanks for checking out our Summit Scale podcast. If you like what we're doing here, please head over to iTunes and subscribe, rate us, and leave a review. It's very much appreciated. And if you want to learn more about the work we do or are looking for a load of free resources to help with scaling your business, please check out our website at www.summitscale.biz.